What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Torchlight Infinite video. Today we're going to be going over how to craft your two swords that you need for the Erika Berserker blade build that is currently hitting in a wave of how fast it can map, farm, currency, and clear things. So let's get into it. This build was made by MilkyBK _ make sure you go follow his Twitch, his YouTube channel. I'll have some links posted down below so that you can see the build guide and everything that he's done. He also has some day 1, day 2, day 3 updates that he made to the build. And then, you know, has his final in-game kind of build version of it that farmed good T7, T8, compasses, and everything else. So check it out. Make sure you leave him a like, a follow, and a subscribe, and all that jazzy jazz stuff. But let's get right into it. Let's go. All right, so before we get into the game, here is the steps that you need to take, how your suffixes should look by the end of step 3, 4, going into working on your prefixes. And that way you can save this and make sure that you're using the right embers and rolling the right stuff in the right order. You're going to go suffix crafting first with your dexterity. You want to get this a high dexterity since we're dex stacking. And then attack speed or attack critical, whichever one you hit first, since they're both on the soul burst ember. And then whichever one you hit, you're going to try to roll the other mod on, right? So don't save any kind of changes until you hit a good gear attack speed or crit, and then roll another one. And hopefully you don't lose one and you can hit all three. On the beginner's version, we are just kind of rolling with whatever we can get, preferably, you know, T4 or higher. But depending on how much currency you have, anything is acceptable. The part that's going to end up costing money is whenever we get to our deck stacking ruling ember modifier. So that's kind of expensive. So if you don't have a whole bunch of currency and you're looking to swap over from Thunderstrike over to Berserker Blade and make your two weapons, and that way you can start rolling with some damage and feel good, then that's going to be the high priority. The other ones you want to hit as high as you can, but don't waste so much money that you can't roll a good tier of attack speed, or damage attacks per dexterity. All right, so here's this. You can pause it right here. I have everything highlighted, that you're gonna, what kind of embers you're gonna use, what modifiers you're looking for, and then of course you can always refer to the pictures. And then once we get to this point and we have finished our dex mod, we're gonna enchant based on what you need. So if you hit a good elemental damage, or you decided to roll with added lightning damage instead of elemental damage right here, then you can craft on, you know, your elemental damage, or you can craft on added lightning damage or percent lightning damage, whatever works best for you right here. That way you can just save a little bit of money and not have to roll 6 prefix and start really costing you some money. This is only for the beginner version. Once we get to the in-game swords, this is going to change from what we're going to use. We're still going to roll our 3 suffix modifiers, but instead of elemental damage, we're going to be rolling a high tier of added lightning damage, and then the high tier of added lightning per dex damage modifiers, and then crafting on gear physical at any tier that we can get, so that we can remove that with an ominous ember, right? So we'll go over those steps on how to do it once we go to the in-game sword crafting. You can see the swords that I'm currently working on for the end game and what else I have left to do and the steps I'm taking to build them. And so let's get right into it. All right, now that we're in game, we're going to be going to the trade house. It unlocks at level 60. You can start buying stuff from here. The thing you're going to be looking for is this base right here, and I'll show you how to search for it. So we're going to come over to advanced. We're going to go to weapons, and then we're going one-handed sword, base gear, hero's longsword. Okay. We're also going to add item level 85. That way we can hopefully get lucky, hit T1s across the board on all of our first ember rolls and just be GG, let's go, done. Right. So item level 85, hero's longsword, and then we're searching. Right. We want to make sure that we got item level 85. That's ridiculously priced. Don't buy that. Right here. 1 FE is what it's looking like. it's going to be. I've bought a couple of these for 1FE, so they work really well. And then the very first steps is we're taking it over to the crafting bench so we can start crafting. Now, you're not going to unlock the crafting bench until like tier 3 maps. So you have time between the, you getting like one good FE, buying the base, and then, collecting some embers and everything else so that you can craft, right? So once you get here, if you didn't get enough embers or anything like that, you can also purchase them from the trade house. But we're looking to just make some beginner ones so that you can swap from Thunderstrike over to Berserking Blade and start being a deck stacker Erika. And the first step is we're going to go with a high level of dexterity, right? Depending on how many you have, you can see I only have 34, not crazy. But if you only have a couple, any tier of dexterity, right? We're just trying to get what we can get on these swords so that we can get our ruling ember dexterity per damage and start becoming deck stacking. We're going to start off with our cultivation ember right here, and we're just going to roll until we hit a decent level of dexterity, right? It doesn't have to be nothing crazy. Like, I'm not a big fan of that. That's not real big. Still not that crazy. Still not that crazy. Not bad, right? So if I'm running out of cultivation embers, I can keep that. These are just our beginning swords so that we can swap over. So it's not bad. We'll stick with that. Then, like I said, on the little notepad that we looked at, you can save that or pause right there, and that way you can run through the steps. We're going with Soul Burst. You're looking for attack critical strike rating and gear attack speed from this. So rolling one or the other is perfectly fine. Multi-strike is also good, but you're going to want your gear attack speed. So if you do roll the multi-strike, try to replace that, with your crit strike rating, not your attack speed. That way it doesn't hurt your actual attacks. So there we go. Gear attack speed, we saved that. And now we're going straight back into Soul Burst because we want a crit strike rating. Or your chance to multi-strike. It's a low level tier though, so I wouldn't really waste my time on it. This isn't a bad, but if your crit rating isn't high and you're not critting, then this modifier does not matter to you, right? You will have some base crit strike, but it's not enough for you to be, oh yeah, let's keep crit strike damage, right? All right, so there we go. Good base right there, good suffixes. We could have rolled our dexterity a little bit higher, but depending on how much currency you have, if you want to go with your dexterity being really high and then the rest of these being a little bit lower mods, that's totally cool. The dexterity is what we're stacking, so the higher you can get your dex, the more damage you'll do once you get your dex mod up on your prefix. So we'll save that. Then we're going to come up to our amplified ember. Sorry. And we're looking to roll a tier, good tier of elemental damage. So there we go. Good tier of elemental damage, T3, not bad. And then from there, you're coming to what is the expensive part of this whole crafting, because you're looking to hit this lightning damage per dex. You're trying to hit a high tier. That way, instead of 24 dex, you're getting 1 to 5%. It's like 16 or 12. And then if you corrupt it, you can get it down to, I think, 8. So that's what we're trying to hit. But you can see that the mod list is pretty big and rulings are kind of expensive. too bad, ain't it? So not the best, but not bad for a beginner's version, right? We can obviously modify this to like a T2 or T1 and increase our damage just from changing this. But if you're beginning and you can see it did take off our attack speed, which isn't bad. We can go re-roll our attack speed back on, right? This is the modifier that you want. We'll save this, and I can always come back up here to our soul burst and try to re-roll our attack speed back on. So there we go. We got everything. Now, for your beginner version, you're going to want to take this and just go to enchant and adds lightning to damage right here to the gear. You know, make it a good one. If you don't have too much flame fuel, go ahead and make it flame sand. It's not a big deal. You can always come in here once you get a little bit more flame fuel and increase this damage by a little bit. It's nothing crazy. And then you enchant that. And there you go. Now you start over and you make another one. And you put them in both your hands. And your big deck's stacking and ready to go. All right, we're back. Now for our intermediate, you can decide whether... before you craft these, if you want to push this character to the end game, right? You're going to spend some time on the character. You're going to spend some money on the character because you can either go the beginner crafts and just roll higher tiers of everything, T1, T2s, and those swords will take you a long way into the game. You can farm a bunch of currency and then you don't have to spend any more big currency on it, and you can save up for another build. Or you can set yourself up as you get currency to be able to, you know, roll into the higher end game version of these, right? So that's the decision you're going to have to make once you reach step 4 right here. Our swords are going to start off the same way. High item level 85, hero's longsword. We're going to go cultivation embers for a high tier dex roll, right? T1, T2. You want to get them as best as you can for your especially if you're going to push this to end game. T1s preferably on all of it. T2s if you just don't want to get crazy and spend, you know, hundreds of cultivation embers or soul burst embers to hit everything, right? You can get lucky, but it could be costly and cost you quite a bit just trying to hit T1s on all this, right? So that's how much money you want to spend on it is up to you. Obviously, intermediate, you can just roll higher tiers of everything, especially that lightning dex mod. Getting a higher tier of that will just increase your damage right there by itself because you're getting more damage per dex if you have a good amount of dex stacking. So our crafts on our suffixes don't change until the end game. When you hit step 9, so we start off the same way. We're gonna go high tier of dex, right? This is the dex that's on my current sword right now. T2 gear attack speed, T2 attack critical strike rating, and then once we're at that, you can decide, like I said, if you're going big decks, you're going to spend some good money. You want to set yourself up to be able to put some more money into this sword, right? Because there is a stop point where you can, okay, I've spent good amount of money on it and I'm kind of running low, so let me go farm some more. But I've got a good base that once I get, 20 FEs to roll Ominous Embers, I got a good base of Ominous Embers, a good base of Restless Embers, and I got good currency to roll those, then I can go straight into rolling my sword, right? So once you go start working on your prefixes, this time instead of doing your elemental damage, we're going to go for a high tier of Essence Ember to get that added lightning damage to gear that you see on this top mod right here. T1, T2, like I said, end game sword, so you're putting everything you can into making this the strongest thing you can. So that's the only difference in the swords from beginner to intermediate to end game. If you just want to do a high level of elemental damage, T1, T2, because you have a bunch of those embers, that's a great intermediate sword. You can do both your swords like that. You'll push T7s, T8s, you know, put a bunch of compasses on, take down Traveler and stuff like that. I did that. I have no problems. I had no problems with those swords doing that. And then I started working on doing these so that I could push, you know, Path of the Braves and stupid stuff that I wanted to run. So Essence Ember till we hit a good high T level of lightning damage to gear. Then we're going back to our Ruling Ember so we can get our high tier level of deck stacking, right? T1 is 12, T2 is 16, so T1, T2, preferably T1 on this mod because that's a whole lot of damage that you can get, you know, with the only being 4 decks difference. But I mean, if you're stacking well over 1100 decks like I am, the 4 adds up, right? So once you get that, you're going to go Amplified Ember. You can't see it right here because I've already Ominous rolled mine and hit this mod right here. But you want to go Amplified Ember and roll any tier of gear physical mod, right? T7, T8, T9, doesn't matter. We're trying to do it cost savingly right here because rolling a 6 mod on a sword, you're going to start pulling out FEs out of the bank, right? So any tier, as long as it saves everything, you don't lose anything, and you hit T9 of gear physical damage, save it. That's what we're doing, right? Then we're going into our Ominous Ember roll, where this is going to cost pretty expensive. I think these are going 1 for 3 FE right now, or a little bit higher whenever I was buying them to roll mine. And every time you roll, it's going to cost you 20 FE. So this is definitely where you're going to start spending quite a bit of money. But any of the 4 mods that I'll show here in a minute, once we get back in the game, that you hit, as long as it takes the gear physical low tier modifier you had off, is great to replace it with. Obviously, elemental penetration would be the best to hit on one of your swords, and then another good modifier on the other sword, so that you're sharing, you know, damage multipliers from both swords really nicely. But at that point, you know, for 20 FEs, you're literally looking to just roll whatever good mod you can, and the 4 that you can roll on the sword are really great mods. 160% gear physical because it's going to end up being a T1, and then 3% attack and block, which we don't care about. But since we are fully converting our physical damage to lightning damage, 160% gear physical took my sword from like 200 all the way up to like 450 of physical damage, and then we're converting all that to lightning, so it makes no difference, right? So all 4 mods are really good. You're looking to just replace that gear physical low tier mod that you put on there with one of these and calling it a day. Then, because you see, I don't have it on my sword yet. It is the craft that I am currently working on, because this one is the actual Gamba, right? You're looking at maybe 1 roll, 2 rolls at most for you to remove that gear physical low tier that you put, and just accepting the mod that you got, right? Because it's going to get expensive if not. But the Restless Ember is, you're looking to replace this attack critical strike rating with the attack critical strike rating mod that it gives you, which is going to give you T1. And if you've ever played PoE, it's also going to give you Culling Strike, or what that does is eliminates enemies, right? So the mod will read out, eliminate enemies that are between 6 and 8% life if you hit them with a critical strike, right? So that's what we're trying to replace it with. That can end up taking you 4 or 5 rolls. So the Restless Ember is definitely the one that's the Gamba, going to be expensive, because at that point you're rolling 20 FE per roll, plus Restless Embers aren't cheap these days, and that's going to get super expensive. As you can tell, I haven't hit mine yet, and currency is getting kind of low, so it starts to make you wonder. I'm still going to push and hopefully hit it soon. And we'll go take a look at the 2 swords that I've crafted, and that way y'all can see, you know, what I'm talking about, what we're looking at, what the Ominous mods are, and the Restless mods are. So I'll see you back in game. All right, so we're back in the game. Right. Here's the sword that I'm currently crafting on from the modifiers on that list that I showed you just a second ago, right? You can pause there, you can follow the steps to start getting towards this. And like I said, This gear physical damage brought me up to see 431 DPS, which I'm converting all of that into lightning because of my, the traits that we took whenever we swapped from Thunder Strike over to Berserker Blade. So we're doing really good damage. The sword, whenever I put it on, was like 100% increased damage and a little bit of survival whenever I put it on. So from there, like I said, once you get to this point, you got your good T1, T2 lightning damage, your good T1, T2 damage per dexterity. You got your T1, T2 dexterity, gear attack speed, critical strike rating. You're going to have your amplified Ember, that's low gear physical damage right here as this mod, right? Before you ominous slam it. And like I said, you don't care what tier this is. You're just going to roll Amplified Ember, 1 FE a piece, right? So you're hoping that first one hits, gear physical damage. Does not matter what tier it is. You're not trying to roll a high fucking tier of this. Just roll a good tier, right? Or don't even roll a good tier. Get the words gear physical damage on here. Who cares about what tier it says? Save it, right? So then we're going to go to our Ominous Ember. And like I said, damage penetrates, elemental resistance is probably the best out of the 4, but all 4 are good, right? With additional damage applied to life being the least good one, but that is a good defense because any additional damage that you apply is going to start recovering your life, right? So, but damage penetrates +2 physical damage. Unless you got the big money, I would just roll one. As long as it takes that gear physical damage off and sits right here and all of your mods stay the same, accept it, go on to the next step, right? Before you start spending 20 FE each roll. Because the next one is a really big gamba. So once you got that modified, whatever actual mod that you end up hitting, you can hit the 160 like I did, or, gear physical damage like I did, you'll be good to go. Then you're going to your Restless Ember, right? So your Restless Ember, what you're trying to roll off is the attack critical strike rating, and what you're trying to replace it with is the attack critical strike rating for this gear, plus critical strike eliminates enemies under 6 to 8% life, right? So basically Culling Strike, and a big increase to your attack critical strike rating. The other mods aren't going to help you that much. So this is where the big gamba comes in. Right? Because any of these other 3 mods can remove any of these other 3 suffixes. If you do hit the attack critical strike rating, it's going to replace the attack critical strike rating because there can't be 2 modifiers of the same thing. So if you do hit this, which is going to be like a T1 hit, just like the Ominous Slam was, you're going to replace this, you're going to save it, and you have the biggest sword that you could possibly ever want for your Erika Berserker Blade, right? I'm about to hit mine here in a second to see if I can't get it. Hopefully I do, and then I can be done with this one sword, and we can start looking at the other. But that's how you're going to craft these. Just follow the steps. You can pause on that screen on the notepad, so you make sure you get all the steps correctly, but it's going to be the same as the beginner for the dex, right? Or for the suffixes, you're going to just want to roll your dex, your attack speed, attack critical strike rating. The only big change is you going from your amplified ember that does elemental damage to now your essence ember, which has a little bit more rolls on it and hitting a good T1 lightning damage to the gear, and then going right back to your rolling and hitting a good T1, T2 dex. And then, of course, your Ominous and your Restless Slams. So that's how you craft the in-games versions. I hope this helps out. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the page if you want to see more crafting tips and tricks. And we're going to start working on some other gear for, Moto and stuff like that. That way you got somewhere to kind of look and see how to do it and follow the steps. Like I said, make sure that you go over, I'll have some links down below. That way you can see Milky BK's build guide for Erika, right? He did a really good job. We're doing really decent damage, moving super fast. So I pump through maps really quickly, right? Just using our strike and then attacking, right? And since it's almost a full 360 attack, we clear really well. Plus Berserker Blade, as it does damage, gets big AoE. So, you know, make sure that you go, I'll have links to his YouTube channel. You go over there, you can watch his build guide. He has all the links for his max roll build guide. He has updated videos on his builds from day 1 to and 3 on his progress and the changes that he made from the build guide, right? And he's tried to update the build guides the best he can for all the changes that he's made. So make sure you give him a like and a follow and a subscribe on Twitch and YouTube. And thank you very much. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.